Hi, folks, and welcome to Through a Scottish Prism, truly Scottish TV's review of the week for things that are appertaining to Scotland and Scottish independence. This is the programme that makes no excuses about being very pro-Scottish, very pro-Scottish independence. We look at things through the prism of Scotland's eye, not London's eye. I'd firstly like to thank you all for last week, so many of you tuning in to our broadcast. We're overwhelmed and extremely pleased that so many of you took the time and effort, and thank you for all the comments that you sent in. It helps us to improve this programme to meet what you want to hear. And I would also say, just if it sounded a wee bit crackly today, I've got a wee bit of a cold and hopefully it won't affect us too much. But last week I recorded this on a Sunday so that Alec and the boys at Truly Scottish TV can do the fancy bits and edit it, etc., and make it the programme it is for you. But while I was doing that, it was at the time just at the cenotaph where the leaders of the different political parties and the royals and the mini royals and the royals, we don't even know who they are, were there looking very sombre and being very patriotically British and laying wreaths and taking part in what I view nowadays as triumphalism. I did, like most people in my younger days, I was happy to buy a poppy and remember, but it's gone from remembrance, in my opinion, it's gone from remembrance to a kind of British triumphalism, and I don't go with that at all. But anyway, Ian Blackford was there representing the Scottish National Party, the third largest party in the British Parliament. He was there wearing the kilt and his Earl of Hague ceramic badge. Now, this was enough to send people like Murdo Fraser and other Scottish but proud mob into meltdown about the effrontery of wearing a kilt at the cenotaph and how bad it was and how terrible it was and how the poppy wasn't the correct type. It's just shameful. It really is. The Scottish cringe and this hatred of all things Scottish is just appalling. The fact that during the First World War, the official figures say that, even though with about 9% of the population, Scotland sustained the most casualties. Somewhere in the region of 20% of all the casualties of the British Army were Scots. And a heck of a lot of them, the majority of them, the vast majority of them, died in their kilts. So for Murdo Fraser and the other Scots but proud mob to come in and make comment against it and say it was an effrontery and an embarrassment for Scotland, they are the ones that should be ashamed. They are the ones that should be embarrassed. And I, for one, am happy to call them out. I'll leave it there before I go to it. I'll come back to Murdo later on. I've got plenty to say about him later. I did mention to you last week that I would possibly do a review on Alex Salmond's fantastic RT show. I don't think I need to. I think looking at my social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., emails and what I've read, I think most of you have already watched it, so you don't need me to review it for you. Suffice to say, what I think is the most telling thing was his fantastic scoop, which should never have been a scoop, which is his interview in English with President Puigdemont. It was the first time in all of British broadcasting that the President of Catalonia has been interviewed, and in English. And that in itself tells you about propaganda, because the very people who were complaining that Alec was a puppet for Putin and it was Russian propaganda, it's actually their propaganda. And their propaganda was, do not allow Puigdemont to speak, because he speaks against what their foreign policy, and their foreign policy is to support Spain come hell or high water, because they want them to help them with their Brexit, and they want to, of course, suppress Scottish independence and anything that gives it credibility. So it's their propaganda that was at fault, and we shall talk more on the propaganda shortly. We've got quite a bit on that later today. But we also know this week, another thing we must cover, of course, was the annual Scottish Labour Party branch manager election. It does seem annual, doesn't it? I was actually just thinking while I was doing this research, what's the longest that any Scottish Labour leaders lasted since June? I mean, it's not. I don't know who the longest serving one is, but they don't seem to hang around for long, and I don't expect this one will either. Dick Leonard. He gave us the usual, how autonomous Scottish Labour will be, and how all the decisions will be made in Scotland, and we're a Scottish party. And in fact, my first division, says Dick, will be that it's possible I'm probably going to suspend Kezia Dugdale for appearing in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Which 4 hours later, Jeremy Corbyn from London, through the Press Association, issued a statement saying Kezia Dugdale will not be suspended by the Labour Party for appearing on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So under 4 hours, under 4 hours, what little credibility Richard Leonard had, which was very little, let's be honest, was gone. He was the one that told us that we should quickly settle, and Labour were on the side of the women for equal pay in the Glasgow District Council dispute. Really? Were you not in charge for 60 years there, Richard, your party, and now you're suddenly in favour? I'm surprised he didn't try, him or Monica Lennon tried to grab the credit for the Janice dispute being settled. But that's, you know, Scottish Labour and hypocrisy, they both go hand in hand. And of course, poor old Anis Sarwar, he's lost out, he's very upset. So, but don't worry, Anis, you can stand again next year when the competition comes round. Yeah, so that was that. But then we have another one where it allowed our broadcasters, our Murdos, and our Scottish proud butts to jump in, which was the minimum pricing. The Supreme Court in London, which I find disagreeable that we've got to go to London with Supreme Court decisions. But anyway, there you go. The High Court in Edinburgh should be enough for me. The Court of Session, rather, in Edinburgh should be the highest court as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, we had to go to the Supreme Court to get the decision on minimum pricing. The Scottish Whisky Association's appeal was thrown out, rightly so. I thought it was a very selfish, self-centred and political delaying tactic by the Scottish Whisky Association. But as soon as that happened, of course, they all started piling in how terrible it was and how expensive alcohol was coming, and it was shocking, nanny state, etc. But the BBC, our broadcaster, BBC Scotland, it saw an opportunity to have an SNP bad story, and in it went, and it was a horror story, and they made an absolute fool of themselves. Those of you who follow my blogs will know I did a blog on this, but for those of you who did, just a quick one, if you didn't catch the story from the BBC, which is that they suggested there'd be booze cruises. You know, people would be the people who drink cheap cider and cheap wines would be getting a hold of transit vans and heading for the border, stocking up as they do in the Dover Calais runs of cheap wines and spirits and cigarettes, and heading back up. But they were going to drive to Carlisle, one assumes, and then drive back to wherever, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Wick, Thurso, I don't know, wherever, with all this cheap booze. Now, you know, the practicalities of that just are ridiculous. The cost of the petrol, the cost of the van, hiring it, or however you acquire it, but the cost of the fuel alone to go up and down the road, how much would you have to buy? Now, these are people who are buying the cheapest of cheap drink. How much money are they going to have to be able to buy copious amounts of alcohol? So it was just a nonsense, but it's typical of the BBC's anti-Scottish bias, their ridiculous lack of journalistic professionalism. They had another story, because this is the week where Robert Mugabe's under house arrest at last. An evil man, a tyrant, no one disputes that fact. And the BBC decided that they would do a bit on it, and how they can manage, you have to doff your hat, they managed to get a kick in at the SNP while they were doing it. They brought on a Professor Paul Moorcroft from the Centre for Foreign Policy Analysis to talk about Mugabe. And he said, and I quote, Robert Mugabe has been in power for 37 years, which is even longer than the SNP. I don't know, you do Hawaii, I don't know. I don't know how you can go from Robert Mugabe to the SNP being in power, a democratically elected government. But the BBC did it, and of course he got away with it. He got away with it. No one pulled him up and said, one shouldn't say this is ridiculous. What's that got to do with the price of fish at Peterhead? Anyway, the BBC encourage these clowns when it suits them, but when it doesn't, because to me the biggest story this week, the huge story that's, you know, which has gone quiet. Again, those of you who follow me on social media, I know that I keep banging away about this £490 billion that overnight disappeared from the UK PLC balance sheet, mainly because of Brexit. But anyway, it's created a huge, as you would expect, £490 billion causes serious concerns for everyone, that is, except the British media, who have gone completely silent on it. And if people like me and others weren't talking about this 490 billion, it would have vanished, gone. No one would be talking about it. It's disappeared, never happened. One day wonder in the papers and the broadcasters, and vanishes. Much the same as the UN report on the appalling behaviour of the British government towards disabled people, which was a human rights violation as far as the United Nations were concerned, and it should stop. Again, this story hardly ran. It didn't merit in-depth reports by anyone within the British Broadcasting Corporation or Independent Television or Channel 4 News or anything in the papers. It went by the wayside. And the latest one is from the British Medical Journal, who have done a report, a study, to show that the Tory government's austerity policies are responsible for needless 120,000 deaths since 2010. It sounds more like a genocide. People have died unnecessarily. But when asked, the BBC wouldn't cover it. They said that they didn't cover the story because, and I've got to quote for you now, I would advise anyone who's drinking a cup of tea or coffee or wine, whatever you're drinking, please put it down. Otherwise, you're about to spray it everywhere. Because the BBC said, the BMJ is not credible. Our audiences expect the BBC to provide impartial and well-sourced news that they can trust. My hypocrisy meter has just exploded. The BBC had the absolute audacity and cheek to say this. However, to compound this, there's the reason for not covering the 120,000 Tory deaths, which incidentally, if it keeps going the way it is, by 2020 it will have climbed to, and this is just in England, remember, this is just in England, 200,000 deaths. But when they did a section earlier, the BBC, a few months back, on statins and the side effects, they were quite happy to quote the BMJ. It suited their narrative. Again, the same when they were doing something on metal hip replacements that it was going wrong, they quoted the BMJ. They were credible then. But when this story, which was anti-British, it proved the paucity of the Tory party. It showed the cruelty of the Tory party policies. It showed how vile it was, killing English people, and in the main elderly people. Because let's not beat about the bush here. While there's all younger deaths, tragic deaths, every death's a tragedy, of course. But in the main, it's older people who die. Now you would think, the Tories are killing off their own voters. I hear some of you saying that's not a bad thing, but let's be realistic here and fair. It's 120,000 unnecessary deaths. Yes, these people would die eventually, of course they would, but they could have lived longer. But these are people who are not in the, shall we say, they're not in the demographic that's best for Tories. These are the people who are in the poorer bands, the poorer households, the poorer diets, who are more susceptible to the austerity, and they're dying. They're being killed by policy. It's a policy. Now, but the BBC don't want to report it, nor does ITV. They're not following up on this because these people are unimportant. Now, you could be sure. People say, well, it must be the same in Scotland. Well, no, it's not, because our government is mitigating, as we know, a lot of the austerity. Because you could be sure, as God made little green apples, if there was one death that the BBC or STV or the foreknown press could pin at the door of the Scottish Government and the SNP, it would be done. Because we know already that they tried it. One of their stories now, the Times of London, which used to be one of the most respected newspapers in the entire planet. If something was printed in the Times of London, it was taken as absolute gospel. It was renowned for its journalism, it was renowned for its truth, and it was renowned for its impartiality. Then it was bought by Rupert Murdoch, and it's now a sister paper of The Sun, and need I say more? So the Times. Now, I didn't read that, it's behind a paywall. I wouldn't give Murdoch steam off my tea or any other steam I was doing. But anyway, so I haven't read who wrote the story. But the bottom line of it was that in the First Minister's constituency in Glasgow, that there was child exploitation going on, that young children were being sold to 70-year-old men for as little as £5, and they were being sexually exploited. And it was all happening in Nicola Sturgeon's constituency. Remember, this is the same BBC who ran with the story as well. They took it, ran it straight from the Times. Our audience expect the BBC to provide impartial and well-sourced news they can trust. Well, it turns out when Superintendent McNulty, Chief Superintendent, sorry, they didn't give me proper rank there, sorry, Chief Superintendent Brian McNulty of Scotland's finest, Police Scotland, said not only did they have no evidence, reports or intelligence of any child exploitation going on in the First Minister's constituency in Glasgow, there was none in all of Glasgow, none. They had no knowledge, no intelligence on it. Or put it another way, folks, it was a lie. A lie. But the BBC were quite happy to run with it because it was having a go at the SNP. It's what we're up against, folks, and we have to know that, you know, because when the Beeb says it, check it. Go on the internet, do your own research, find out. But back to this, 200,000 people are going to die by 20 if they don't change direction on austerity. And we know, with the onset of Brexit coming in 2019, it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. So how many more deaths are the Tories going to be responsible for before our fourth estate, the media and the people of England stand up and say enough is enough? And because Brexit continues, and I would love to be able to tell you that there's been a big breakthrough this week on Brexit, but there hasn't. It's the same. Nothing's moved forward. We had a debate in Parliament where the SNP and Plaid put forward an amendment to the Great Repeal Bill to protect the rights of EU citizens in the UK, and it was voted down overwhelmingly. The Labour Party, the fraudsters, did their usual, abstained, although 3 of them voted with the Tories, but all of them voted down this, allowed this to be voted down, so EU citizens aren't protected. So when the Labour Party are trying to tell you that they're different from the Tories in Brexit, it's a lie. They're every bit as bad. But it did, you know, several things happened through this week that I think should give us encouragement. There was some within our own movement who believe that we should wait on the referendum. Some believe that we should get another mandate, although we've got a triple lock mandate just now. They believe we should get another mandate in the 2021 when the next Scottish Holyrood elections come up. I don't buy into that, and I just don't. But people like Tommy Shepherd, who I've greatest respect for, and Pete Wishart, another one with great respect for, they felt this was the way forward. They have since changed their minds, and have come back to the position the same, similar to Nicola, is that we have a mandate and we will use it if we have to. And Nicola has never wavered as such. I keep reading these reports about how she's wavered and she's put things in the back burner, but she's not. She's been consistent. She said all along, when we know the outcome of Brexit, we reserve the right to call that referendum. And I've said, again, those of you who read my blogs and read my tweets, etc., my Facebook stuff, I believe the referendum will be in September of next year. I think everything points to that. I think by then we will know what Brexit means, and it's looking more and more like a hard Brexit. And then that's when we have to go to the country. We have to get the mandate from the people. We have to get people to say, yes, we want an independent sovereign state of Scotland before we're pulled out of the EU by the UK and suffer all the chaos that's going to come from that. We have to be ready. So we have a transition into either EFTA, which I prefer, or the EU, whichever our government decides. But we have to do that. And in my opinion, by September next year is the ideal time to hold that referendum. Now, that's just my opinion, but we shall see. But anyway, folks, I'm running out of time. I shall have to wrap up here. There's so much more I could have said, wanted to say, but time is the enemy. Time is the enemy. So I hope you all keep well for this week, and I will try and be ready for you next week. But what I should say to you, as of next week, our broadcast will come from sunny downtown Barhead, because I'm going home to Borhead for a few weeks' holiday, which I'm very much looking forward to. I'm needing to recharge my batteries and resupply myself with some stuffs I can't get here. I'll be bringing back a load of square sausage from my local butcher, as well as some good totty scones. I've had some recipes sent through to me, but I just made them not the same. And a few other things, but I look forward to seeing my friends. I'm actually doing a couple of talks as well, which I'm excited about. It'll be a first for me. That should be fun. But you all take care, and I shall, as I say, report to you from downtown Barhead next week. Take care, folks. See you later.